Welcome to Political Beatdown. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Cohen. Let's get right into it. You have Donald Trump saying that he will disown his supporters if they don't agree that everything relating to Jeffrey Epstein is one big hoax created by James Comey, Bill Clinton, and former President Barack Obama as well. You have Donald Trump saying that he thinks the Justice Department really did a great job with everything Epstein. You had a press conference from Caroline Leavitt earlier today, and she said, like, we're done. Like, we're moving on past this. And Americans have a lot of questions. They're dissatisfied with that answer. We've been covering it here at the Midas Touch Network and on Political Beatdown every step of the way. Cohen, I'll throw it to you.
Hey, Ben, are you upset? Are you upset?
No, I mean, look.
Now that they're excommunicating you from MAGA, are you upset about that?
Oh, I'm deeply concerned and worried. But look, at the end of the day, what I don't want to lose sight of in this discussion is sometimes that often what happens in the media, where the debate becomes kind of like a game, like it becomes gamified, right? And it's just like another issue, right? Like what we're talking about here is a real child sex trafficking ring led by Epstein and led by, his co-conspirators and Epstein that have done the most vile and despicable things to young girls. Like it's that happened. He was convicted of it. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of it. We know that it is a fact that there is a cover-up of rich male elite billionaires who were involved in this sex trafficking ring, where there was billions of dollars being spent and the most horrific conduct. I mean, when Donald Trump was running for office in 2016, he brought it up quite frequently. And he would say, Bill Clinton, this is going to be bad for the Clintons. So this was an issue that Trump, talked about frequently. We know if kind of right before 2004, that kind of late 80s into 2004, Trump's connections with Epstein, that are there. But when Donald Trump calls this, a hoax, there are broader ramifications than even, just to the political zeitgeist. What he's done effectively is he's shut down any further criminal investigations into other co-conspirators and other people who are involved. Not just is he not releasing the files, Cohen, but he's shutting down any look back into what could happen, and with all these victims that are out there, I don't want that to be lost into the discussion and it to be, hey, here's just another Donald Trump thing, Yeah,
I mean, we've been dealing with that now for how long? 7 years, where something comes out and everybody throws their hands up, and it's big, it's ugly, it's grotesque, it's as Ben said, I mean, you're talking about the sex trafficking of children, right? Of children, of young females. And then all of a sudden, the next big sort of shit pops out, and lo and behold, well, that's not as bad as this one, so we move on. Well, this doesn't seem to be moving on as much as the president and his team would like it to. You now have people like Nick Fuentes, somebody who was a Trump ass kisser, a total loyalist, out there attacking him on it. You have Steve Bannon out there attacking Trump on his refusal to put the unredacted file out there for the American people to see. You have Megyn Kelly out there. You have, what's his name? Tucker Carlson that's out there, and Charlie Kirk. I mean, you're not talking about just nobodies. You're not talking about somebody who has a little channel that's going on. They got their 10, 15, people that jump on with them. You're talking about millions and millions of people that are part of that MAGA community, right? Knee deep into this shit of MAGA. They're right now turning around and they're like, wait, hold on. Did you lie to us? Do you think that we're stupid? For How many years now have we been hearing that this is a Democratic cabal of child sex trafficking like never ever seen before? So you're telling us that it does exist or it doesn't exist? Did you lie to us or did you not lie to us? We want to know because they are knee deep into the lie, believing that this is a Democratic cabal and they want answers. Well, guess what? Those answers are sitting on Attorney General Pam Bondi's desk right now. And for whatever the reason may be, and I don't know if they're billionaires that were involved in this or millionaires. I don't know if it was, just people who were in Epstein's world that participated. We don't know who did and who didn't participate. And the reason why is because Trump, who campaigned on the notion that he was going to release the unredacted files to Epstein, to Martin Luther King Jr. assassination, to the JFK assassination, has elected to do none of it. And they're pissed.
One of the things that I always try to ground it also in what are the facts that we know, and as lawyers, what do we need to see more of? Because we see the video of Donald Trump dancing with Epstein, and Trump's face looks like rabid and we all know that image of them partying together where they're pointing at the girls and Donald Trump saying it's hard to read his lips, but he's pointing at the girls inside. But I say, what is it? What's in the corpus of information that we know? And I try to lay it out like this, Cohen. I've talked about it on other shows, but for those watching now, I said, if you have the full pie of 100% of Epstein list and Epstein files, about 10% has been released thus far. If you were to run through a Chat GPT or another AI of who's kind of the most prominent, wealthy man who's on there repeatedly from the 10% that have been released, other than Epstein, who's at the top of the list, it would be Donald Trump. And I say, look, Donald Trump's identified in the civil cases involving Epstein as Doe 174. Now, that to me means that there's a Doe 173, a Doe 175, a Doe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a list of Doe men in civil cases involved in Epstein's orbit who, because the information could be personally damaging to them, are identified as Does. Does that ultimately mean that when you see the information that it will be damaging, or do the facts always, should they be verified? Yeah, of course, but there's clearly a list. If he's Doe 174, it goes Doe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's people after him, on that list. From the small amount of flight logs that have been released, Trump's name appears 7 times. Does that mean anything more than it appeared 7 times? I don't know, but it clearly appears more than mostly anybody else's name. Trump's all over the deposition transcripts that have been released, and only a small percentage of the depositions of some of the sex trafficking victims have been released. And they said, hey, we're going to Trump's casino in Atlantic City with Epstein, and Epstein said he was on the phone with Donald Trump. We know at Ghislaine Maxwell's sex trafficking trial, there was a Jane Doe who's now a woman. At the time, she was 14 years old, and she was brought to Mar-a-Lago by Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein and introduced to Trump. We could get more of that grand jury testimony. We don't have it, but I would like to see what's in that grand jury testimony. We know that girls would get jobs at Mar-a-Lago as the towel girls at the spa at Mar-a-Lago, like Virginia Giuffre, and that was a feeding ground to Epstein's sex trafficking. That's an undisputed fact that's out there. Virginia Giuffre, 17-year-old girl, she worked as the position was called towel girl at Mar-a-Lago. She was previously homeless, and Epstein's MO would be to find underage destitute girls and then introduce them to this rich world and then sex traffic them. So Virginia Giuffre, she gets the job as, quote, towel girl at Mar-a-Lago. And then Ghislaine Maxwell, sex traffic for Epstein, goes to Mar-a-Lago, sees the towel girl in the spa and says, hey, I see you're in the spa. I want to introduce you to someone who also likes massages. Do you want to go and meet a really rich person? No pressure. And that's how they started the grooming. And then ultimately, someone like Virginia Giuffre was sex trafficked, and she was one of the victims of also involved with Prince Andrew and other wealthy people, who she's talked about, and so I don't want to lose sight of it's more than just them dancing together, at the event. Of course, Trump said in a 2002 piece in New York Magazine that Epstein's a great guy. He said who likes women on the younger side, beautiful women on the younger side. So we know those facts. Now, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see other things that are being released. And what I laid out for you right there, you can come to your own conclusions. But the bottom line is, whatever your conclusion is, the one conclusion that I disagree with is that we should cover up the information
100%.
and make it go away. And I think, we should see it and we should know, and
they campaigned on it, Ben. We're not talking about they changed their mind from a Monday to a Wednesday. We're talking about listening to this story, this lie about a Democratic cabal, a group of Democrats who were running a child sex operation for years on years and years. And now that file is sitting on our Attorney General's desk for all of us to potentially put an end to the speculation, to the conspiracy theories, all you need to do is to tell your Attorney General what you told the American people you intended to do, and that is to release it. By the way, it's not like it's going to affect Jeffrey Epstein. The guy's dead, right? It's going to affect people who were involved in this disgraceful cabal, and they should be outed, and justice should be had for the victims. I don't know why this is hard for people to understand. I cannot stand, as I watch sometimes television, the mainstream media or the cable news lame shit that goes on, each person coming up with their opinion. Well, it could be, it might be, maybe, if you look at the facts and they got photos, and then there's this one who said this and so on. That's all circumstantial evidence. The evidence exists in a file that was put together by law enforcement over a 10-year period where this was being investigated. I want those facts. I want that documentary evidence so I can turn around and say, oh, so-and-so was involved? Good. Now let's put him away. Oh, so-and-so is not. He's just a schmuck that went to the island. Fine. Bad move, and so on. I think that we have a right to know this. I mean, again, not because it's sordid, not because it ruined the lives of so many young, beautiful women, these young girls, but because they campaigned on it. They campaigned on it for over 7 years. And we, I think, as Americans, we have a right to know, especially as the conspiracy, as the conversation now claims that there were scenarios that dealt with foreign individuals who might have been assets. And so I believe we have a right to know, plain and simple. And I'm tired of listening to, these schmucky pundits giving us their opinions. Their opinions are worthless.
And it's often worthless because it's often through a political lens. And I'll give you an example, right? So Fox will call on someone like John Yoo,
By the way, even Taco agrees.
A MAGA Republican lawyer. And so it's filtered through the Republican view. So it's like, all right, what's our political talking point? Okay. The talking point is, all right, what should it be? The auto pen scandal that former President Biden used an auto pen, which, by the way, all former presidents and Trump use auto pens to sign things. This isn't some massive scandal. They're like, we need to be figuring that out. And so that's the political, right? So what happens is you have something like a child sex trafficking ring, and then it gets warped into a gamified political debate. And it's like, okay, what are our talking points on the right? Okay, auto pen is bigger. I got it. And so, like, here's John Yoo, saying that. Let's play you first.
Yeah.
If you care about the Constitution and the rule of law, Trump is right. The auto pen is way more serious than Jeffrey Epstein, because you could have a series of aides here who seized the power of the presidency and used it for their own purposes. You can't have an aide exercising the constitutional power of pardon or the decision not to prosecute people. And so they could have committed forgery. They could have committed fraud. I expect the Justice Department has already opened an investigation, and they just don't want to say.
Right. So you have that as the talk.
By the way, he's not wrong, Ben. There's my Constitution. I'm opening it up here to Amendment 4 of the ratification resolution of Constitutional Convention, where it says the right of the people to be secure that the auto pen of Joe Biden is not used to effectuate against unsearchable searches and seizures, and it shall not be violated. That's in here.
Of course, the auto pen is
stupid. What a stupid argument. It's so ridiculous.
But then it becomes this, framework. And that's why I always want to bring it back of like, no, we're talking about children being sexually abused by rich billionaire men, and Donald Trump's out there calling it a hoax. And, I think the growth of this network, a lot of it, I really don't like politics. The political beatdown, people want to know, is a beatdown on the politics to really get into the truth and understand, what is happening here. And so much of my involvement in I guess the political world is from an apolitical perspective, where I'd watch Trump do these things, and and maybe because I'm not from a political background, and I think the audience would agree with me, I'm just like, well, what did he just say? What was that? It goes from the gross, the perverted, the criminal, to the to the constant lies about like, we're going to be so rich from tariffs. We're so rich. Gas is $1.98. I'm like, no, it isn't. It isn't. And that's not the way tariffs work. Or Cohen, let me just show you this one too. Like during the campaign, I've showed you this one before. During the campaign, Donald Trump would speak occasionally at high schools. And one of the things that he would say, like, this was a high school in Iowa, and he would look in the crowd and he would bring this up on his own. And he would say, you know what? People have accused me of getting peed on by hookers. And I want you to know, I don't like golden showers. I don't like the germs. And I tell Melania, and and I mean this sincerely, I'm like, this is the presidency. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we here? I'll just to remind people. Like,
by the way, actually, he's inaccurate because urine is sterile. Well, listen, facts matter, brother.
Play the clip.
He was with 4 hookers. You think that was good that night to go up and tell my wife, it's not true, darling. I love you very much. It's not true. Actually, that one she didn't believe because she said he's a germaphobe. He's not into that, He's not into golden showers, as they say they call that. He's not. I don't like that idea. No, I didn't. I thought that would be a big problem. I was going to have a rough night, but that one she was very good on. She said, no.
Jesus Christ. I mean, you really have to turn around and say to yourself, is this a skit? I mean, is this like a Saturday Night Live skit? Because then it's funny. And of course, if it's not, well, it's not funny. It's sad. It's pathetic. But I do want to bring something up, Ben. If you could just join me for a quick second, because somewhere along the line, the hope when Ben and I started Political Beatdown now, 255 episodes ago, is that we'd be able to educate our community with information that either I possess based upon my 15-year relationship with him, knowing him better than basically anybody, and Ben's legal mind and his political mind. He'll tell you that he doesn't like politics and so on. He understands politics very well. All right. And this I know because I speak to him. So let me say this to those of you in our community that are commenting and so on about things like Well, Michael, tell us what you know about Epstein's Island. Well, let me give you the first thing that I know about Epstein's Island. It's surrounded by water. Okay? Other than that, I've never been there. I have no idea. You should all know and be smart enough to understand that at the time of all of this, I was in high school, in college, and then in law school. I never met Jeffrey Epstein. That everybody hopefully knows by now. I never paid off a child on behalf of Donald Trump or anyone. None of that is in my repertoire. To anybody that knows me, knows there are lines that nobody should cross. Nobody. All right. And to ask these sort of stupid questions, because that's really what they are. It's almost like, what are you really thinking here? Is it simply just to type something out? We're smarter than that as a community. And we need to be smarter because we're not MAGA. These are like dumb comments that MAGA would make, simply to try to irritate somebody or to discredit them or to denigrate them. That's not who we are. Ben will constantly tell you in every episode, this is a community that wants to spread love, humanity, righteousness, and truth. And if you want to be a part of this community, do the same as Ben, do the same as I. Speak your truth. But there's a big difference than when you turn around and you start, well, which young girls did you pay off? Please understand, all right? I wasn't anywhere within the realm by almost 2 decades, a decade and a half around this. So you have to sometimes use your brains. Even those of you that maybe you don't like me, maybe you are MAGA and you're just here to troll, you still need to use your brains if you have any. And I'm disappointed that these people are even in this community trying to effectuate what? To change the narrative, to change the conversation that Ben and I have. We are absolutely and emphatically insistent that these files be released so that we know the truth, plain and simple. And every single one of you should want the same thing.
Let me show you what Caroline Leavitt said at the press conference earlier today, where she was asked if Donald Trump believes that justice has been served. And her response is look, the Justice Department did its work and all good. We're good now. Here, play this clip.
Does the president believe that justice has been served in the Epstein case?
Look, the president believes that he directed the Department of Justice to do an exhaustive and thorough review, and they did that. And they all agreed, the FBI director, the deputy FBI director, the attorney general, on the memo that they drafted and they released.
Thank you, Caroline. Just so.
And now the memo that they released said the Epstein list doesn't exist and that they would not be, and that there was like no more incriminating files and they were shutting it down. So that's, that's where we're going with this. And Cohen, to me, as I said, we need to focus on what the promise was made by the Trump and his regime. This was the big issue, one of the big issues that they pushed, the fact that they're covering it up. And we have to ask, what else are you, covering up? And the answer is kind of everything. One of the things that we learned today as well, NBC just did a report on it. Only one of the 3 Iranian facilities was damaged in a meaningful way in the strikes that the U.S. did. Even kind of a worse update than we previously got, where it was believed that it would potentially take 1 year to 2 years for Iran to be able to get nuclear weapons. We basically did nothing. I mean,
wait, are you trying to say it was not obliterated, Ben?
One of the things in the article also was that it said Donald Trump overruled the military generals because Trump viewed, based on his instincts, that the way to do it was to do just kind of one quick strike, where the generals wanted a more evolved plan. So Trump substituted once again the instincts that he claims he has over the generals, and then just covers it up and says, look, everything is great. Everything is great. And it's not. By the way, as we're recording on July 17th, other than that I'm about to bring it up again, has any one of our viewers heard about what's happening in Texas? Because what they're focused on there is the special legislative session in order to gerrymander further to remove 5 Democratic seats in order to try to rig the election for Trump. But have we talked about any more the flash floods and the response by the federal government and the fact that
they're still missing, like 100 people is still missing? All of a sudden that's become second fiddle, or third fiddle or fourth fiddle, that it should be ignored. That's the problem.
In the richest nation in the world, we still have, to your point, Cohen, so many people are missing. Their bodies aren't even found, yet alone the fact that the casualties here, are in the hundreds and hundreds of people. A mass catastrophe event. Trump shows up for 2 hours. He describes this was like a wave that no surfer could ever surf this wave. And then all the MAGA Republicans say, if you criticize the response, you're a loser, because like in football, you apparently can't criticize responses. And it takes an evil and sick person, right? That is what they say, if you're questioning the response. So that's one of those things, Cohen, that becomes a story.
Does anybody, by the way, can I just add to that, Ben? Does anybody know anything about what updates have been done right now to air traffic control? I mean, we all get into airplanes at some point during the year. I mean, we had a whole bunch of incidents taking place, more so in like the first 100 days of this administration than in the 4 years of the previous. Anything ever happen with that? Ben and I could actually spend the entire hour today talking about stories that came out like a flamethrower, and then all of a sudden, while the flames are still over there, they're still burning. We're talking about some new fire that's coming on, right? I mean, what about what's going on in California, right? Did anybody hear about what's happening there in terms of military still parading the streets and these ICE raids and so on? What about El Salvador? I mean, what about Alcatraz, Alligator Alcatraz? I mean, all of that is now what? Inconsequential, insignificant, not worthy of speaking. Everything is now focused around these files, and then after that it'll be something else, and then people will just forget about it, and then they're just going to move on, and that doesn't help us for 2026. That's what my Substack was all about, and thank you to Midas Touch Network for posting it. I think it's one of my more important ones,
because the corporate news and kind of mainstream thought, which is actually, I shouldn't call it mainstream thought, what is artificially parading itself as mainstream thought is just like, hey, Donald Trump is a crap human being. He is a dictator. He lies about everything, and he will always do horrible things. However, it's entertaining. So just go for the ride, and that's just what it is. And it's an abuse. It's an abusive mentality to have, that somehow we, the people, deserve a real shit human being to inflict this upon us, when we, the people, were always the ones who controlled the power and literally created a country to stop this exact kind of thing from happening. And it's why the people powered aspect of this network and this movement, though, is so important, because when you have to, hear, Donald Trump, what was he saying over the past 24 hours as well? Inflation is gone. Gas is $1.98. We are in the golden age, and everything is perfect, and everyone's doing fantastic. Oh, and he's brought in $17 trillion already from his Middle East trip, even though the countries in the Middle East, the GDP was like, what, 450 billion from the United Arab Emirates. It's just a lie on a lie.
We're
And
making $2 billion a day in tariffs. You heard
on
that
top
one?
of, or what, and
We're
at the
pulling
end
in
of the day,
200, to be exact, we're pulling in 240 million a day. All right.
Yeah.
And by the way, those tariffs existed before. Let's not forget the concept of tariffs wasn't created by Trump. There was always reciprocal back and forth. He's making the claim that it's 2 billion. It's just not true.
but regardless, the tariff is a literal tax on the American business. Every time I have to hear this idiot say that the foreign country's paying us this money, they're not paying us anything at all. When you do a 50% tariff on Brazil on their coffee exports, all you're doing is at the point of entry at the port, the importing company fills out a form, and whereas they would normally pay $1 million for it, they now pay $1.5 million for it. And the $500,000 goes to the Treasury as a 50% tax on the business. Now, the business then decides, well, if our margins are this or our margins are that, what do we need to do to earn a profit? How do we survive as a business? And usually the way they'll do it is they're going to pass that on to the consumer in the form of a price hike. And then you're going to see inflation start to rise. And we're seeing inflation start to rise. And the trajectory that it's on is that it's going to go from 2 points. Right now it's 2.7%, 2.9-ish core inflation, and I think what we'll see by October is it'll be in the threes, and it's going to start creeping back up, where next year when we have these conversations, we'll probably be in the 4.5% range. And this isn't going to be a shocker. It's like a very basic concept. The only reason why we see some, perhaps the inflation not as bad as it could have been is the taco aspect of it, that Trump always chickens out, and that he'll pause the tariffs and then put them back on and pause them. And so they're not actually being implemented because he keeps pressing pause on them. But what this is creating in general is just this uncertain business environment that nobody knows what the rules are or what the taxes are, what the tariffs are. And it's problematic. And again, what I just said there, it's not a Democrat position or a liberal position or a Republican. This should just be a logical position. And when we come back, we'll talk about this more. That chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, is now being investigated by the Trump regime for fraud because they want to try to fire him for cause. And so you have that going on, and same thing, Cohen, where Trump shows a piece of paper to Republicans, says he's going to fire Jerome Powell. The Republicans leak to the press that he's about to be fired. Trump's asked, are you going to fire Jerome Powell because the markets are tanking? And then Donald Trump says, no, I'm not. Well, what are you doing? Well, we're doing a criminal investigation of him. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? And then Donald Trump goes, whoever appointed him is a real idiot. You appointed him. You appointed Jerome Powell, and he was actually a good appointee. Jerome Powell's actually running a central fiscal policy the way it should. It's the one thing preventing us right now from being in a Great Depression. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Reminder, subscribe to Michael Cohen's YouTube channel at The Michael Cohen Show YouTube. Subscribe to the Mea Culpa podcast. He's got Michael Wolff as a guest who is going to be the biographer for Jeffrey Epstein. And was also the biographer for Trump. So Wolff has a lot to share. I'm excited to hear that interview. Subscribe to Michael Cohen's Substack. And Cohen also writes on our Substack. Check that out. Next Tuesday, Patreon. I'll be on it. My back is good. I'm cleared by the doc. We're all
Ready
good.
to go.
Patreon.com/political beatdown. Let's take a quick break.
All right. So picture this. I'm on my way out the door, trying to look halfway respectable for a meeting, and boom. Marlo, you've heard Marlo, my neighbor's cat, sprawled across the hallway like he pays rent. Cute little furball, right? Wrong, because 5 minutes later, I'm sneezing like I just walked through a field of ragweed in a wind tunnel. I mean, I don't even own a cat, and I'm still dealing with cat allergens. The whole thing is just totally unreal. This episode of Political Beatdown is brought to you by Pacgen. Now, if you've got a cat, or in my case, a neighbor's cat who thinks he's mine, you don't have to surrender your sinuses to the feline overlords. You see, almost 20% of people suffer from cat allergens, and 3 in 4, they're not thrilled with the so-called solutions that are out there. That's where Pacgen steps in. Pacgen's cat allergen neutralizing spray, it's like sending a tactical team into your living room. And it doesn't mess with your immune system. It goes straight after the actual allergens in your home, and it breaks them down with no pills, no shots, no voodoo, just science. You see, it turns out that the problem isn't the fur. It's the saliva. Cats groom like it's their job. And Fel D1, that's the protein behind most cat allergens. It's all over their adorable faces. Now, Pacgen's patent-pending whisker block protein, it binds and it neutralizes these Fel D1. No harsh chemicals, no side effects. I literally sprayed some around last week before my buddy who dropped by. And he's one of those that I'll die if I breathe near a cat type. And for literally the first time, no red eyes, no wheezing, just him wondering if Marlowe had moved out of the building. It's effective, safe, and made for people who love their pets or their neighbors' pets, but not the sneezing fits. Got a dog? Dust allergies? Pacgen's got sprays for that too. I love that they're not trying to trick your immune system. They're just handling the source of the problem. Smart, simple, and safe for both people and pets. Your pets aren't just pets. They're family, right? So get the relief you need with Pacgen. Head right now to pacgen.com/beat for an extra 25% off your order and an exclusive gift for our listeners at checkout. That's pacgen.com/beat for an extra 25% off your order and an exclusive gift. One last time, Pacgen, pacgen.com/beat for an extra 25% off and a gift auto apply to checkout. Because listen, if I can live peacefully with Marlowe, you can live peacefully with your pets too.
Welcome back to Political Beatdown. Ben Meiselas, Michael Cohen. I want to show you, though, also the kind of anatomy of the gaslighting and the fraud right here when it comes to the Trump regime. Oh, by the way, hat tip to those pro-democracy sponsors. The discount codes are in the description below. Support our sponsors because it supports our show. We don't have...
By the way, if you have a cat or if you have any neighbor or something like that that pisses you off, Pacgen.
So here, so you would have these MAGA Republican Congress members like Congresswoman Salazar from South Florida. She's Cuban. Her parents escaped Castro, and she is big Trump supporter, kind of one of the people leading the charge in the Cuban community away from Democrats towards Trump. Trump. And one of the things that she assured the Cubans in her community was that she's got this legislation, the Dignity Act, you know, and that she was always sure that Trump respected the Dignity Act and that he would never remove the temporary protected status of the Cuban people. Trump loves the Cuban. It's never going to be removed. So she was asked about it right after the election on November 11th, 2024. She did an interview with PBS. Now, why do you think one of the reasons that MAGA Republicans want to defund PBS and have them in the rescission package is because they don't like that, you know, what PBS is doing here and in other interviews is it's very factual questions. It's not partisan. It's not political. It is, why do you think that Donald Trump's not going to do mass deportations when people at the Republican convention were holding up signs that said mass deportation now? So watch what she says, Cohen, on November 11th, 2024. Play this clip. If we've got the clip. We got the clip, Jeremy?
There's no way we can grow as a country and continue being the #1 economy in the world if we don't have hands. Period. So let's be intelligent. Let's just bring them out of the shadows, make them pay something that they're not paying right now. Make them pay a fine, no federal programs, and they can go home for Christmas and they can buy a home. And with the BBB, the economy is going to burst, just like it happened in 2019. I go back to the president. The president is the guy who can make this happen. There is no other president like Trump. Look what he did with Iran. Look what.
Not all 200,000 undocumented in your community. Is that what you're saying?
I am sure that that the Trump administration is not going to be targeting those people who have been here for more than 5 years, that have American kids, that don't have criminal records, that have been working in the economy and paying taxes. I am sure that they're going to hone in on the criminals who arrived less than 4 years ago. Because I wrote the Dignity Act, and I am the first one who understands that you have to give some type of dignity to those who have been here for more than 5 years, people who have roots in the country, not people who are coming to commit crimes.
If I can just clarify from you, have you received those kinds of details from anyone in a potential Trump administration? Because so far what we've heard is a proposal for mass deportations. We have about 30 seconds left. Have you gotten those assurances?
Mass deportation to those who are committing crimes who have been here for less than 5 years. You understand that you have millions of undocumented who are contributing with the economy and are helping our country to be a better one.
So you know what I would really like, Ben? I'd like to see what her comment is today. I'd like to see whether or not she's going to take that Dignity Act out of her ass now, considering garbage, worthless.
I have her comment today. It was actually the first one that we accidentally played first. Here's what she said today.
Yes.
Let's play that one now, Jeremy.
There's no way we can grow as a country and continue being the #1 economy in the world if we don't have hands. Period. So let's be intelligent. Let's just bring them out of the shadows, make them pay something that they're not paying right now. Make them pay a fine, no federal programs, and they can go home for Christmas and they can buy a home. And with the BBB, the economy is going to burst, just like it happened in 2019. I go back to the president. The president is the guy who can make this happen. There is no other president like Trump. Look what he did with Iran. Look what he did with Venezuela, with China. So I have no doubt, I have faith that he could be for immigration what Lincoln was for slavery and Reagan was for communism. Just watch him.
Okay, well, we'll see how it goes. I hope that you'll come back and tell us how this moves along. As you mentioned, it is newly introduced.
You see how they shift the goalpost, though? That's why I wanted to show those side by side. So, Cohen, you saw her in November 2024 making that promise. Now you saw her July 17th, 2025, still engaging in this Ponzi scheme behavior. And let me show you what else happened today, though, Cohen and Beatdown Brigaders. So surely Donald Trump would have at least looked at the Dignity Act, right? Surely he would, because if he respected the Cuban population, he would at least have known what's in this Dignity Act. So what do you think happens today when Caroline Leavitt is asked what she thinks about the legislation that Salazar was talking about in 2024 and again today? Watch, let's play it.
First on Congress, Congresswoman Salazar introduced legislation that would give some illegal immigrants in the country a path to citizenship. 10 Republicans signed on to what she's calling the Dignity Act. I'm curious what the White House's position is on the legislation and if the president would veto this bill if it made it to its desk.
From my understanding, the White House nor the president has actually read through this legislation. We've been focused on, of course, the One Big Beautiful Bill, which passed, which is another historic accomplishment of this president in record time. The Genius Act this week, the rescissions package, that's been the focus of the White House. But the president has made it very clear he will not support amnesty for illegal aliens in any way.
And I want to give you a chance to respond.
So he didn't
he didn't even read the bill. He didn't even. She's so irrelevant. The Cuban people are so irrelevant to him that he didn't even read this Dignity Act. What bothers me the most about Salazar and the bullshit that she's spewing when she goes on television, sucking up to President Trump. Maybe she wants a cabinet position down the road when some of these others get shit canned. Here's the funny thing. Turn on your television, Congresswoman Salazar. Turn on your television and watch mass deportation now. Watch as Kristi Noem cosplays in DHS gear with AR-15s or AK-47s, posing in front of a bunch of guys stripped down into their shorts. Why don't you turn the television on and watch to see people who are being disappeared from the streets simply because they're standing at a Home Depot, they're in a hospital, they're at church, a house of worship, at a school, or what have you. Oh my God, maybe they're not Cubans. Maybe they're just lowly El Salvadorians or Mexicans or anything other than Cubans, right? Trust me when I tell you, she's a moron. And the fact that she fails to even acknowledge that Trump doesn't care about any of these folks. You are in this country as MAGA, or as this administration will tell you, you came to this country illegally. That is enough for them to determine that you are a criminal. Doesn't have to be a violent criminal, though the comments that come out of the administration is that they're murderers, rapists, drug dealers, gang leaders, and so on. No. Tom Homan will turn around and tell you, if you cross the border into America, you committed a crime. If you have overstayed your visa, you have committed a crime. Forget the fact that you have 3 sons that are right now in the Marines. Fuck you. You're out of here. We're going to grab you. We're going to put you into either Alligator, Alcatraz, or one of the other internment camps. This is what is happening right now. And the fact that she could ignore the reality, the fact that she just ignores it and is ignoring it not just to the American people, but to her own constituents, makes her really just truly pathetic.
Right, because she's a leader in the Cuban community. She uses the fact that her family fled the dictatorship in Cuba to come here to present that former President Biden and the Democrats were like Castro, when former President Biden was the person who respected the temporary protected status of the Cuban people and supported a thriving way of life for the Cuban people and their families and pathways towards citizenship. And the guy who's here right now, who's worse than Castro in Donald Trump, the guy who's worse than the Hugo Chavez's of the world in Venezuela, who is actively inflicting the pain and throwing your people into concentration camps, that you then say he has the ability to be the Lincoln when it comes to immigration. What are you talking about? And this is again where as you're like my wife, and you're Cohen in the sense you're not actually like my wife, but in the sense that you go,
I appreciate
that. In the sense that you go, you like politics. What are you talking about? But when I watch that, it doesn't hit me as me being like a political. It hits me as like, what the F are you talking? What are you talking about? There's a concentration camp an hour and a half away from where you live, where your people are being thrown into, and you're out there saying that. Like then when you hear from some of the Cubans who still support Trump, and not a little bit, in Little Havana or whatever, they're like, well, when it comes to immigration, we don't like it, but when it comes to the other issues, we identify more with him on the other issues. What other? He wants you dead. He wants you literally dead.
I mean, maybe the only thing that they should agree with him on is the fact that they should get rid of that aspartame and use cane sugar now in Coca-Cola. Ben, I am as lost as you, as the son of a Holocaust survivor. All right. I want people to understand this. These internment camps, these aren't something that we ever should see again. It was bad enough in the late 30s and the 40s. It was bad enough. It's a shit stain on the world's history. And yet here we are, the United States of America, the greatest fucking country in the history of mankind, creating internment camps Seriously? We did that again once before with the yellow scare. Now we're doing it again, but this time we're doing it for anybody that they determine is here illegally. And again, I want to use that. And Jeremy, I don't know if you have the article or you have a clip on it, but there was a story about a man who is not a U.S. citizen, who has been in this country now for well over 30 years, is home, pays taxes, has a job, he has 3 sons. All 3 sons are serving in the U.S. military. I believe they are all Marines, fighting right now for our democracy, for our Constitution, for our ability within which to be here with you so that our freedoms are not taken from us, protecting our country and our way of life. Grabbed him. He's in an internment camp. How does any of this make any sense to anyone? What crime did he commit? He came to this country 30 years ago. He overstayed, and then he made this place his home. I don't know.
Well, see, that's why, Cohen, where
does it make sense?
I want you to give the 2-finger salute, but how can you?
How could it not go to Salazar?
Well, yeah, and then how could you though have any debate or discussion? We'll bring this episode full circle. MAGA Republicans, release the Epstein files, release the Epstein files. Me, you, others. Okay, release it. We want you. It may be bad for Democrats. Okay, release it. Release it. We want it out. Good. Release it. Put it. Get it all out there. We don't want to release. We never want to release. It's all a hoax. How do you have any rational discussion with human beings who behave like that? Similarly, how do you have a rational discussion with somebody like a Salazar on any topic when ultimately she'll say in November, I guarantee it, he's only going after the criminals, the Dignity Act. Well, he hasn't even read it. He hasn't read it, Salazar. I think he's going to be like Lincoln on immigration with everything booming. How do I interact with you as a human being to human being where you're clearly just a sociopath? I can't have real discussion.
She's not a sociopath, Ben. That's not what she is. She's a bullshit artist. All right. She likes the position and the power that she's in, and she's willing to say anything within which to retain it. She knows that what she's saying is a lie. She just doesn't care. She's a despicable piece of shit. She's definitively going to get the 2-finger salute, because anybody that can make statements like that has no compassion for somebody else. I don't care if you're Cuban. I don't care if you're El Salvadorian. I don't care if you're Mexican. I don't care who you are. All right. If you're in this country, all right, and you are now have 3 kids, for example, that are in the military, if you are not a criminal, let's give them a pathway to citizenship that makes sense for everybody. Instead to sit there, well, I know for a fact that Donald's going to fuck you. You don't know shit from Shinola. You're an idiot. You could take your Dignity Act and stuff it up your ass, all right? And then you can go ahead, pull it out and stuff it up your ass again, because you are a fucking moron who doesn't understand who you're even talking to. And so with that, Congresswoman Salazar, seriously, fuck you.
There you have it, Michael Cohen. I'm excited to hear your show with Michael Wolff on the Mea Culpa podcast. Especially I've seen Wolff in small doses, but to hear him speak for, the length of your interviews, that's going to be a good one. And given you both of your backgrounds, it'll be an interesting conversation indeed. So everybody subscribe to the Mea Culpa audio podcast, wherever podcasts are available. Subscribe to Michael Cohen's YouTube channel at The Michael Cohen Show. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Subscribe to Michael Cohen's Substack. Subscribe to our The Midas Touch Substack. We'll be on Patreon, which is a special meeting we do with our patrons. So if you ever wanted to meet with Michael Cohen, go to patreon.com/political beatdown. A link to the Patreon Zoom sign up is in the description below as well. So you can look at the description, you can click it, sign up for Patreon. And then Michael Cohen and I are looking forward to seeing new members. If you're not already a member of Patreon, if you are a member, fantastic. All right, we'll see you next time on Political Beatdown. Reminder, the show I do with my brothers will be on 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific live. We'll see you for that show. Michael Cohen and I will see you on Political Beatdown next Tuesday as well. Have a good one, everybody. Shout out Brigaders. Shout out Midas Mighty.
Boom.